Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar again. This is the Let's Talk About series, and this one is about managing my direct payments. So if people have been on some of these webinars before, we've had some previous webinars that's been specifically on employing PAs or accessing to care and support, and people just generally said, actually, we want to have a discussion about just how people manage the direct payments, what people's relationships are like with either the CCG or the local authorities, and just different ways of managing it. So for those that are new to the webinars, this is part of the new Be Human Let's Talk About series, and we're hosting various themes and subjects that are important to people. That's me. Some people said, oh, we don't know what you look like. So that's me, that's Julie Stansfield. We've also got Tricia Nicole and Gaynor, and we are all part of the Be Human movement. It will be facilitating and helping to get through some of the questions this afternoon. The webinars are recorded, so we always record these webinars so that other people are able to see them afterwards, and they go on both the Be Human website, but they also go on YouTube as a recording so that people can see them. I'll just move that on. So how to participate today? You have a little hand on your panel there. So once the presenters have finished talking, if you wanted to ask a question verbally and live, you can click on this hand and I'll be able to spot you and then unmute you so that you can ask your question live. If you're not happy to do that live, or you've got questions that can't wait as people are speaking, you can pop them in this question box, and me, Gaynor and Tricia will start picking up from those and we will ask on the question box. If you're on an iPad, it's slightly different, but same thing. There's a hand and there's an ask a question. So what to expect today? So reduced numbers of speakers today. So we've got 5 speakers today. Each one will spend around about 5 minutes each just explaining how they manage their direct payments, and we've got a really good variance of how different people manage it. So we've got Miro, who people know and love now. He's done, I think, nearly every webinar that we've done now, and he manages his own direct payment. We've got Karen, who I'm sure you'll have met before. Karen and her husband manage a personal health budget via a direct payment, and they've moved from social care to healthcare direct payment. We've got Monza and Sue. So Monza has a direct payment that he manages with his support from a managed account with his local organisation, but also a circle of support that he's built to ensure that he stays in control of managing his direct payment. And then we've got Lisa, who manages her adult son's direct payments, which previously included education. So we've tried to get a good range, really, of different experiences. So we're going to get on with that now, and thank you to those that have sent us some questions in advance. We've got them logged to be able to ask after the presentations as well. And thank you so much, Miro. I think you've done every single one, Miro, haven't you?
It feels like it, yeah. No, I'm joking. No, it's been great fun. So hello everybody, my name's Miro Griffiths. So for context, I take a direct payment. I've had direct payments for last 13 years. Initially, I was joint funded health and social care, and then moved over to fully continuing healthcare via the CCG about 3 years ago, and now I have a personal health budget. I employ 6 PAs. I have 2 additional bank staff, and recently during the pandemic, I've also put my partner, who lives in the house, on the books as well. She does the minimal amount of support to just kind of step in, or where there's a 2-to-1 need, she'll be paid for the additional work, because we want to limit the amount of people coming into the house. And of course, if there are any questions on that, I can answer them later on. I have 24-hour assistants. I have a dedicated chief PA within the team, identified within my team, and that's the initial point of contact for other PAs for any administrative issues regarding leave or problems with shift or collection of timesheets. So in terms of managing the budget, I'm going to kind of focus on 3 areas. Firstly, it's about the organization and administration. So I use a payroll service to sort out tax, national insurance, monthly pay, the holiday pay, sick pay, pension contributions. And for those of you who come to previous ones, you know that I have a 4-month rolling rota. So PAs know what they're working for, the shift patterns for the 4 months. and then that kind of refreshes with additional changes for holidays and so on. So what happens is PAs will submit their timesheets to the chief PA, and then the chief PA collects all the timesheets together, puts them into one document for me with the hard copy of the timesheets, and sends and puts all the information into an Excel spreadsheet, and then sends it to me. Then my job is that I review the Excel spreadsheet alongside the hard copies, cross-reference them to make sure everything looks legitimate. I keep a hard copy of every month of the timesheets, and I keep a copy of the Excel spreadsheet with the hours, just in case there's anything needs to be reviewed, queries from PAs, and then we submit the timesheets to the payroll. And then it comes to the payment issue, which is the second area I want to talk about. So with regard to payments, there's a number of things to think about. So I have a dedicated bank account, which the CCG pay directly into. It's always important to check the amount that gets paid in. So usually you'll receive an invoice through the post from the CCG or from the local authority telling you how much is they paid you that month. It's always important to check the amount and make sure it's correct. Sometimes, again, you need to think about this in relation to support plan, but sometimes at the start of the tax year, you may have an additional pots of money for one-off costs. So it's important to make sure that they have paid this. And despite my suspicions, people who work in finance, they are human beings and they do make mistakes. So it's always important just to make sure you are checking this, because I've had situations where I've been underfunded by a couple of £1,000 in 1 month. And obviously if that wasn't checked, then it would be a serious implications for the review section. So also it's important to keep all receipts, and I keep all the invoices and all the references from the CCG. I have a filing cabinet dedicated to that. And then pay slips. So the payroll service will send me the pay slips for all my staff, and then I talk to each staff and ask them what's their preferred method of receiving that pay slip, and then we send it out to them. So some people want it on WhatsApp, some people want it on Facebook, some people want it by email, and so on. And then we identify a regular payment date to the PAs, and that's specified in the contract. So all my PAs get paid at the beginning of the month, so they know when during the recruitment phase what day of the month I pay, and that day is paid every month. I don't have a situation where I'm paying some staff earlier in the month, some later, because I need to manage my time. So just one person. Well, sorry, 1 day. And then finally, third section I want to just reference is around relationship with the CCG. So I have my first point of contact is a support advisor, or what we may refer to as an independent living advisor, and they're attached to me via the local disabled people's organisation. So for me, that would be Cheshire Centre for Independent Living. I'm not going to name the person, but it's the best person I've ever worked with, and that's really important because you need to make sure that you have a really good and compatible relationship with your support advisor. So if you think that might work for you, it's important to try to access one. Sometimes the CCGs will have a contract or relationship with their local DPO, so see if that's the case. If not, speak to your local DPO anyway, or Centre for Independent Living, and of course build up the relationship with your support advisor and get them to be your ally in the struggles that you may encounter when trying to access the right level of support. And again, it's important to you may have a clash in terms of morals and values, and if that's the case, it may not be the right person to work with you with regard to advocating for your support plan. So I have a monthly chat with my support advisor to discuss any issues, and also I ask her to ask me questions that I probably haven't thought about, to give me to prompt and think about things that are going on, because sometimes I may just settle for problems each month and I don't really recognize them as a problem until someone asks me specifically about any problems with staff or any problems with shift at the moment or issues with payroll and so on. And then I also have an annual review with the CCG. So what I do is before the meeting, I produce a document with the following information. It lists all the PAs and all the, when they started working for me. It gives an average breakdown of a month of shifts where people work during that month, although I never picked December because I did once and it messed everything up because December is a very unusual month with bank holidays and so on. And then I also provide an extensive list of duties and responsibilities carried out by the PAs, and that's to show the CCG that why the health budget is essential, and why there's no room then for misinterpretation around, oh well, are you using it correctly, or are you does it meet your needs, and so on. I can clearly have that documented, given to them so they can take it away and there's no ambiguity. And I also include a copy of bank statements. And what's important is that this provides the evidence then to the CCG, because I want them to be upfront and clear with the CCG about what why I'm using the support, how it's being utilized, why it's necessary, And this then allows me to safeguard against any attempts to either minimize support or reduce support, or try to argue that health and care objectives aren't being met. And the situations when CCGs may try to use my annual review to say, well, should we reduce your budget a little bit? I always say to them before they come to the meeting, if you're going to propose any changes to the budget, I want to see a clear breakdown document of all your decision making in relation to your proposals, and I want to see how those decision making proposals align with the statutory legislation and the statutory guidance around the delivery of personalised healthcare. And I also inform them that anything you give me at the meeting, I'm not going to agree at the meeting because I want to show it to a solicitor before we go any further. And that really, emphasises then that I'm doing due diligence and I'm being open and transparent as well. I'm not threatening, but I'm being very clear about, I want to check that everything we're doing, everything we're discussing is proper and legal. So to summarize, key points for me is be organized, keep receipts, have a folder dedicated to kind of, your personal budget or personal health budget, have a clear plan of how you spend your time in the month dealing with the administrative issues around your personal health budget. Second point is be upfront with the CCG or local authority about what you expect from them and what you and how you want them to behave and act with you when they do want to review or propose changes. And third point is remember that personalized support, whether it's a personal health budget, personal budget, they're not gifts. These are our entitlements. We're entitled to access support. Nobody's doing us a favor by giving us a personal health budget. We have the right to access it, and therefore it should be done in an appropriate way and respectful for our rights, but also our demands and requests. And also the final point is, bear in mind that sometimes people within CCGs and local authorities, they misinterpret the policies. A lot of the problems we've had with personalized support is because people who are administrating it and people who are involved in kind of review and logistics of it are misinterpreting what the aspirations are of the guidance and of the legislation. So if you think that people are misinterpreting the importance of why you need support or why you want to use it in a flexible way, clearly articulate what you want to do and give a rationale for that. Be coherent, but also be firm as well and say, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. If you have problems, show me why it's a problem and link that back to the legislation and link that back to guidance. And I'll stop there.
Great. Thanks, Miro. And this question's already coming in, so we're going to collect them and save them to the end of the presentation. So next, it's lovely to introduce Karen. Thank you. Welcome back, Karen.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Karen and I'm married to Gavin. Gavin has had a direct payment for 18 years now, initially with social care and for the last 8 as a personal health budget. One of the things that we were really clear about is that we wanted it to be very personal, very flexible, and recognising, as Miro said, that it is a legal right, but with the right comes some responsibility. And we wanted to get it right. So what we did when we started, the first thing we did was recognise that I didn't have the skills or the will to manage the money, the payroll. That was my big worry. So I found somebody to do that on our behalf, to make sure that was legal, to make sure the PAs got paid, the tax, the insurance, etc. was all done. And that works very, very well for us. PAs do have a choice of being paid weekly or monthly. We're very lucky in that one of our PAs has designed a little website where we do all our recording, keep all our critical info, and within that website they've all got their own little portal where they can receive the wage slips, they can submit the hours, etc. We work on a rolling rota, but it's a 3-week rolling rota, but that just continues forever. And the PAs actually came up with their own rota and based it around, because we have 24-hour care, so to some degree it doesn't matter who comes because they all do the same job, but what is important that somebody comes. So we always know somebody's coming, and the shifts work very well for the PAs, so well that we've never had any sickness or any absence in 8 years, which has been really, really good. We do have a team of 6. We work on the premise of open, honest discussion. So if there's an issue, we'll come and tell us, and we will equally tell you. one of the things that we did do, we've got like a handbook which contains the contracts and the do's and don'ts within our house to make sure people understood that whilst this is their workplace and we have to keep the workplace safe, it's also our house, so they have to respect that. The PA design little thing that they made, very, very useful for us when dealing with the CCG. Because one of the things that we have to do is, Gavin, we don't have a support broker. We actually have the complex care nurse. The relationship with the CCG was initially not difficult, but cold. And we really, really had to work at that because we weren't really 100% sure what we were doing. And I'm certain that they weren't sure either. We've done it for 8 years. It's worked very, very well. The CCG currently are undergoing some changes, which is putting a little bit of pressure on us in terms of, it feels like the choice, the control, they're trying to take it back in-house, in particular within regard to training, saying that we have to use certain training providers, which we are actually saying we don't want to, because we've done it for 8 years and that's what we don't want to do. Choice and control for us is very, very important within, particularly Gavin, within his life. The conditions that he have make him be described as unstable and unpredictable. I'm not sure that's just the conditions either. That might just be him as a person. But the CCG want to understand what is unstable and what is unpredictable, even though for 8 years they've seen it. So we have to record information. This little website actually tots up the number of seizures, choking episodes, resuscitation attempts. So what that does, it informs the review. The review for us is still, we still find it stressful, gathering all the information together. But what we try and do is make sure that we are in front of the CCG. So when she arrives, which happens to be next Thursday, I will have ready for her, I've got a pack of everything that I think she will need, which includes what we've called a support plan update, which gives an update on the health conditions and what we're doing, etc. Any new equipment. One of the big things they do worry about with us is risk, and how is the risk minimised. Well, how is the risk controlled? But I actually say, well, you can't control it, it's minimised. So that's around ensuring the training that we get is thorough, tailored to what we need, that it's refreshed, and it's managed in a way that works for Gavin primarily. Because if you don't have any risk in your life, then he has no life. So it's his right, his choice, he understands. So that's quite a terse time with the CCG, and it's something that we have to go to talk to really all the time. So we've got the payroll covered, we've got insurance covered, we've got timesheets covered. Our PAs actually get paid 36 hours a week, but the rota works that some weeks they do a little more and some weeks they do a little less, but they get paid monthly on a 36-hour week, and that works for them and it works for us. For the review, we're back to the budget. We check that we're not overspending on the budget. We check that we've got receipts, that everything can be accounted for, because yeah, it's public money and I understand that. But with the CCG, one of the things we've had to do is acknowledge that we're coming at it from different viewpoints and we might use different language, but ultimately I think I have to believe that she wants the best for Gavin. And we've got to a stage where it's not an uncomfortable process like it was. We still get the angst, I still get the paperwork ready, but all that will do is actually justify the spend, the need. I don't like some of the things they do, for example, what they call high cost panel, and I challenge what's high cost every year, but it's become a bit of a conversation now. It's not perfect, but it works for us, and it is personal, it is legal, and it is flexible. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Karen. And again, there's lots of questions coming in around personal health budgets and CCG, so we will pick those up. So next, we're really pleased to invite Monza, not new to webinars, but new to these Let's Talk About webinars. So welcome, Monza. And he's joined with his circle chair, Sue Bott. So welcome both.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Monza Real. I use electric talk box. I will let my chair trust give you. I use electric talk box. I will let my chair trust give you.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Monza. I thought you were going to say a bit more. Well, there you are. You never know. So Monza has a direct payment and a managed account. And a few years ago, and I can't remember how many, I'm sorry to say, Monza decided to set up a circle of support to help him with his direct payment. And so he approached people that he knew, including myself, and I've known Monza for a good number of years, so we came together and we formed Monza's a circle of support, and I'm kind of the chair of the circle of support, but it's not really a traditional role of as chair, I have to say, because when we meet, I actually think that that Monza's the one who directs the meeting and decides what it is that we need to be talking about, as indeed it should be. We have our meetings on webinar, so we're well used to using the webinar, because we live in different parts of the country. So you can tell from that Monza gets around a bit, which is why he knows people from different parts of the country. And so we go through all the issues that Monza has a concern about, and we don't have a specified cycle of meetings, as it were. So it's not like we meet once a month. We meet as and when we need to, and when Monza would like us to meet, really. So in the last few months, for example, there's been a few issues, because there's been some issues with the managed account and the change of all the complications of that, and so a little more often than perhaps we would normally do. But the thing is that, I mean, I certainly don't regard it as a difficult role at all, because all of us in Monza's circle, where you know, we consider Monza as our friend, and so very happy to meet with Monza and help out where we can. And how it works is that, so we will advise Monza on on particular things and tell him what it is that we think would be a good idea to happen. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to happen, because at the end of the day, it's Monza's direct payment, and it's up to him what he does. But he does take on board what we say, and usually follows any suggestions that we have made. So, and it's been good during the pandemic, because Monza lives on his own. Actually, so do I. And what's been good is that we've been able to support each other. So we've had regular phone calls, conversations, and I've appreciated that, and I think that Monza, you have too. So we do have a look at the business side of things to make sure that the direct payment is going according to plan, and it's a direct payment from social services. So we do liaise with the social worker, and I suppose we take on different roles, those of us in the circle of support, so playing to our strengths, really. So one of us is very good, able to really talk the social services language. So she does a liaison with the social worker, and then one of the other members of the circle, he's very good on the finance side. So he's very good at keeping an eye on the money. And then myself, I mean, I'm a disabled person as well as Monza. So I suppose that's where I come in, really. As being a disabled person, I want to make sure that Monza has maximum choice and control in his life, because that's what I want for myself as well as for him. So that's what my role is. So Monza, what have I left out? What would you like to say?
We have good team. They knowing me and some time I don't agree, but they won't stop me, and also I have experience doing my money myself. It is not easy having the worrying. Now I have a support
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Sue and Monza. There's some questions.
Now I have a support service.
Brilliant. Yeah. So I just thought that would be, because I know some people really worry about, oh, well, you know, it's all right if you can do it yourself and you can organise and, you know, but there are very different ways of doing it. And quite often things like circles of support or some of the managed accounts, you know, certainly from my experience, Monza is still very in control of it. So I think the point you've just made about, you know, sometimes people don't agree on it, but ultimately it's your decision. They're just there to advise you, not to tell you how to live your life. Although we try to do sometimes, don't we, Monza? We'll move on to the next speaker now. So again, a new one for people who are used to doing the webinars, but Lisa's been a long-standing presenter within some of the Partners in Policy Making courses. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi everybody. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, as Julie said, my name's Lisa. I'm mum to two fab boys called Jamie and Tom, who are both now in their 20s. And I just need to say that I'm sharing all of this information with you with their complete agreement. We've used direct payments in all sorts of different ways over the years as the kids have grown and changed and their lives have I guess moved into adulthood. So I thought I'd just take you on a bit of a journey of where we started and the different experiences we had. Our first experience with direct payments and personal budgets was with a direct payment we managed completely ourselves. Jamie, our older son, was out of school yet again. He had repeated placement breakdowns through his teens. He has a history and lots of labels around severe and challenging behaviour. And the local authority on this occasion decided that they would fund full-time 2-to-1 support at home during this particular placement breakdown. Unfortunately, none of the organisations anywhere near to us were willing to support Jamie because they perceived him as too high risk. And the local authority eventually found an organisation 90 miles away who started coming every day. We hit a roadblock when the support worker that Jamie really got on with left that organisation, and we wanted to keep him. So after a chat with the local authority, they agreed that they would give us a direct payment and we could employ him ourselves. It worked absolutely brilliantly as far as Jamie was concerned, and in terms of the practicalities of agreeing what and when and how the support would look like. But it was absolutely a nightmare for us in terms of the administration. I don't think me or my then husband had any idea in terms of not just calculating the pay, tax, national insurance and pension, but the returns to HMRC as well as the local authority. It certainly taught us a bit of a life lesson about us wanting the control and the choice, but we didn't necessarily want the paperwork. Our next venture was into short breaks. Jamie was away at school at this stage, and Tom had been allocated short break provision in a fairly traditional format. It was a support worker arranged by the local authority who would come and take him out to do things. And he absolutely hated it. He was having a really hard time at that time. His school placement had just broken down. And we had a chat with our social worker and said, look, what he really, really wants is to just escape to the middle of nowhere and go fishing and build up a natural support network. So after a bit of debate and a lot of person-centred planning that we did beforehand, we agreed with the local authority that we would merge my carer's allowance and Tom's direct payment for his short breaks and use it to pay for a season pitch for our touring caravan on a caravan site in the middle of nowhere with 5 fishing lakes. That was bliss. It worked brilliantly for years. And in terms of the paperwork, that was so straightforward. The money went into our bank account. We got an invoice from the site, and then we presented the invoice and the receipt to the local authority. But meanwhile, Jamie was now in a residential therapeutic provision, because we spent a lot of years fighting to keep him out of secure provision. And the support worker who'd worked with him one-to-one wasn't available anymore. Jamie really didn't want a new person in his life. He loved the school he was at, but he was 36 weeks in a 52-week provision. So we had a bit of a negotiation with the local authority, and this time we devised an individual service fund. So his short break provision money for when he was at home during holidays was put into a block, and we could commute it to periods of time back at school, which we could control at a moment's notice. And that was brilliant. In terms of how it was managed, school held the ISF. We had complete free rein on how we used it. We just negotiated with the school, and both boys at that stage were in the child in need process. So the detail was just picked up in the child in need meetings in terms of any monitoring. When Tom reached 16, he had an education, health and care plan, and at this stage was funded in a mainstream independent school with some extra support. He wanted to stay at school. He obviously was going to struggle with their normal post-16 provision. And we wanted to create a bespoke programme for him. We were lucky that it was just after the legislation changed, so personal education budgets were now available. So we agreed that he wanted a work placement for 50% of his time. He didn't want a learning support assistant. Instead, he wanted one-to-one tutoring, and he also wanted drum lessons. So that was, we did a, again, person-centered plan in terms of what was working, what was not working, what was important to Tom, what was important for Tom. And then we sat down with the local authority and the school and said, right, how do we do this? Do we take this as a personal budget? Do we come to some agreement? And in actual fact, we were able to negotiate it so that we had all of the control, but school got the money as a notional budget, and they, with us, oversaw all the different aspects of his provision. When Jamie came home at 18, that was a more complex situation. His placement had broken down again after the school he was at was sold and changed hands, and they cut his place. Nowhere locally would have him. He had really big ambitions and a very clear person-centered transition plan about exactly what he wanted to do with his life. And so we decided the only way that that was going to happen was to create a completely bespoke programme that included education, social care and health. He didn't want a split. He didn't want to feel that his day was education here, social care there. He just wanted to have the flex to do what was right for him when it was right for him. So this time we found a local charity, a tiny local charity, not a school, who were willing to work in partnership with us. And we created a completely bespoke programme for him. We created, in effect, an ISF with this charity, where Jamie and I had complete control over the programme, and we could adapt it and flex it at a moment's notice. So we and the charity controlled the money. It was in an ISF, and we basically flexed it week by week to develop as Jamie developed. So he did all sorts of things. He did work experience placements, he went to a festival, he learned to drive, and driving lessons were included in it. We did all sorts of things, and it was really, really successful. And he eventually left that programme and has been working ever since. Jamie now lives in his own home on shared ownership. He drives and has his own car, and he has his own small business, but he does still need support in his life. So now he has a full personal budget through a direct payment and also a personal health budget. We have a managed account for Jamie's personal budget. He employs 2 personal assistants, and we've now changed it so that he also now employs a cleaning service. Because Jamie ebbs and flows in terms of his support needs. So when he's doing great, he wants and needs minimal support in his life. When he's having a slightly more difficult time, he needs to vary that and up it again. We basically have a pot, and the people who run the managed account tell me each month how much is in the pot. Jamie and I decide how to vary it. So his PAs have contracts for a fixed number of hours, but we actually have a file and what we call the pink book at Jamie's house, and the actual hours that each PA works each day goes into the pink book, and Jamie countersigns it. So he takes responsibility, and then we fill in timesheets at the end of each month. In fact, the local authority have not even attempted to review him for 3 years now. That's partly, I think, because there's been a lot of changes of personnel, but also I think because they have the reassurance of the figures that come in through the managed account, but also I think they know us very well now, and they just trust us to get on with it. In terms of the personal health budget, when Jamie was in the therapeutic placement, he received a lot of therapeutic and psychological support, which has been really helpful for him, and he wanted that to continue. We found that locally, that sort of support for someone like Jamie just didn't exist. So we asked for a personal health budget, and we would employ an independent psychologist to do it. So that's exactly what we did. We found the independent psychologist. They come to Jamie's house. He chose them. I don't get involved at all. I don't have any knowledge of what happens in their sessions. That's between him and them. And they come one-to-one with him for an hour and a half each week. Initially, it looked as though we were going to have to pay them ourselves. But now it's set up as a notional budget with the continuing healthcare team, and they pay the psychologist direct, which again reduces the paperwork for us. And I think really what I wanted to say, all I wanted to say was, you know, plan for yourselves, be creative and understand your rights. I echo what Myro says, you know, this is about a good life, and just be on the front foot.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, so plenty of questions coming in. So we're going to move on to questions and comments from you first. So I'm going to see Tricia as the people that have come in with any specific questions, and then we'll move on to picking up people who've started to put the hand up to come on and ask questions live.
So we'll pick up some of the ones that we've said already. Yes, we've got a few very specific ones. So let me do the specific ones first. So Monzo, people are very interested in your electronic speech aid. There's a few people who've it's pressed buttons for. So I just wondered, there's some questions about.
Well, like the button there, pressing the button.
Yeah. So particularly question that. What it is, first of all, which one you've got. A couple of people said, oh, that would be really useful for someone I love or someone I know. If you could be really specific and say what it is you've got, that would be really helpful. And then the usual stuff about, so who does fund it, particularly not just the getting of the machine, but the ongoing servicing and training people and updating all those sorts of things. So I get to do that one first.
Today, I am using a passenger. But I had a try run I don't have time talk about assessment where
Brilliant. Monza, would you be happy if
I willing if people very interesting we could do a meeting.
Brilliant. Thanks, Monza. So we could possibly do a separate sheet saying that what Monza's got and how we went through that process. And if people wanted to jump on a separate webinar specifically on that, I think, Monza, that's what you're offering, that you do a
That's
webinar.
right.
Yeah, brilliant. And it's NHS funded, isn't it? So it goes through an NHS funded assessment. So it's not through social care direct payment. Thanks, Tricia.
I could get information and some one come from liberator. I could get information and someone come from liberator.
Brilliant. Thanks, Monza.
Okay, so the next is some just kind of some general observations from people about getting enough funding, and it's not just necessarily enough funding to, you know, to cover your needs, but also enough funding to bear in mind things like pensions, and some particular things around paying above the rate that is suggested, and that's both in local authorities and in CCGs. So I'm just going to log that, and then any of you can come back if that's all right. There's some specific ones for you, Miro, that are personal health budget ones. So first of all, and you may choose not to answer this, that's absolutely fine, but people are interested in whether or not you pay more for your chief PA, and actually what you pay, and it's whether you pay what you're told to pay or whether or not you pay differently. So a few people are interested in rates of pay.
Shall I answer that now, or do you want to?
Yeah,
so no, the chief PAs pay the same amount. What we just do with it, we built it was a discussion with them, because it also helps kind of streamline things within the whole PA system. What we do is, I'm of the view that all my PAs are doing, you know, important jobs, but they're all doing it differently in different ways. So they're all paid the same amount, to kind of, you know, demonstrate the importance of all of them. With the chief PA, it just means that we build in time within their shifts, so they have time to go and kind of go away and do that while I maybe don't need a PA right next to me in that moment. So we make sure it's allocated to those shifts. But the chief PA it's not enforced on anybody. So when we're looking for a chief PA, we offer it out to the PAs and see who wants it. And usually a PA will always come forward and say, "Oh, I'm interested in doing it." One, it adds to their CV, but also they know that they're then you know, there's an opportunity to make sure that for all the PAs, they are well organized, and there's no kind of emergency or crisis situations arising all the time, because we've got a good system of accountability.
Brilliant. A very specific one. I know that you're paying your partner at the moment, but somebody got the question about paying family members. I just want you to say a little bit about paying family members, and it was different during COVID than not during COVID. So,
Sorry.
It was a general request, but I know there's a difference in COVID to out of COVID. So.
Yeah, so I think you've got to be careful. There's a number of caveats to it. The point is that the guidance is very clear that you can pay family members in exceptional circumstances and where there is due diligence and accountability. So you would have to be very clear on what's the rationale for having a family member do it, and also to account for some of the problems that may arise from that. So if you can preempt that and actually create a clear articulation of why you're doing it and how you're going to mitigate the risks associated with it. So for example, there are, it would be unsuitable if my partner was also in charge of the account and in terms of taking all responsibility of the timesheets without my involvement, because there would be a conflict of interest. There'd also be an issue in terms of there's a question about if you're receiving support of somebody in the home, how do you have a situation where they have to be treated like every other PA? So if you wanted to raise a question of their performance, or if there was a concern that you have about their work ethic and so on. So thinking through the kind of concerns that may be raised from the CCG or the LA, and have that kind of articulation how you're going to address that is important. But again, it's about the rationale. So my partner came on because we wanted to limit the amount of people coming into the house, and we'll review it at a time when shielding comes to an end. For me, shielding is going to continue till at least January. So we'll have to monitor that. But my partner is doing the minimal amount of hours. So if you look at the schedule, it's not like we're trying to push other PAs off the books in order to maximize the amount going to her. She's just stepping in to help when crises emerge, because we don't want to have too many people coming in. But it's about being clear on why you're doing it and how you're going to account for some of those risks and ensure that there's accountability and transparency, because it is, it does, as Karen said, it comes with responsibilities.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so
move on.
You said a little bit more about.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Tricia, do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start moving on to the hands up. So Felicia, Helen and Sheila, get ready after this one.
Okay, in that case, I'll put that one up. So very specific one for anyone around liability when you've got people who've been working with you for a long time, and anybody who's set up as a company to manage that. So if that's anybody.
I'm not entirely sure sorry, I'm not. What's the question?
In terms of, so if people have been working with you for a long time, your liability for things like redundancy, if you've built up a lot of hours of people have worked with you for a lot of years. Some will say they've got a 5-person team working 30+ years. Has anybody set up a company?
So again, well, in terms of redundancy, the question would be why would there be a redundancy? As I said, it might be because somebody has died, or it might be because your needs are no longer met. It will be the responsibility of your funder to account for those additional costs, just as they would, for example, for making sure that they account for the pension contributions in the amount that they give you. So the cost, isn't bared by the individual. I'm not sure about the setting up the company. I wasn't clear on what the connection was to that. But the key point is that if there are additional costs being incurred because of the by the individual, then obviously that needs to be a conversation with the LA, the CCG. Okay. But redundancy is a unique thing. I know I've recently seen that a lot of people have started taking off redundancies off their support plan, because the argument is that, well, if there was, it's a very unusual circumstance to be in when you're facing redundancy, and it's unlikely that you would make one PA redundant and keep the rest on unless there was a major change to your support plan.
Fair enough. Thank you. That's lovely. That's covered most of them anyway, so that's good. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. So I'm coming to Felicia first. So you just need to unmute yourself. Okay. There we are. Okay. Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much. This is my first time joining this webinar, and can I just say thank you to all of you for all that you've shared, because I am very new to direct payment, and only this afternoon interviewed with my fantastic personal support advisor at PA the first time, and I'm going to be using direct payments I just wanted to say thank you very much. I will need to listen to this webinar again because due to some of my complex medical conditions, I have cognitive impairment, and I need to listen to things slower and take things in. However, I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of you for sharing, and I will listen to the other webinars. So it wasn't a question, it was just to say thank you so much for having this invaluable support and information to all of us less able-bodied people.
Brilliant, thank you. And it's all people sharing that together as well. So a lot of it is sort of peer support that works together. So yeah, please go on YouTube. Some people find it easier to look on YouTube so that you can just pause it and rewind it and get it a little bit more accessible to take. And there's some really good webinars up there now. Thanks ever so much. Yeah. Helen, I'm coming to you next. So if you just unmute yourself, Helen. Hi, Helen.
I've got a whole list of questions here actually, but I'll try and keep them brief. I'm in Northamptonshire and I manage the personal health budget for my 82-year-old mother who has multiple sclerosis. She has dysphagia as well, so she's now not able to really communicate at all. So I play a number of roles. I'm her advocate, I manage the PHB, I also act as a carer sometimes. I'm the lead carer, I'm doing all the payroll and a variety of different things. I'm very aware of the sort of conflicts of interests. And I've been speaking to the, and particularly in terms of managing staff, because it's one thing that I find really difficult is you've got carers in a home. I actually live 100 miles away from my mother, but I go every weekend. Normally people you have in your home are either your guests or it's perhaps a tradesman that's just coming in to do a piece of work for a short period of time. But with PAs, you've got them in there the whole time, and I find the relationship very difficult to manage between being a fellow carer, an employer, a daughter, and the sort of care manager trying to coordinate everything. So I was very interested in the support advice that you'd got, because I've been speaking to the CCG about could I employ a care manager. I was thinking I need a care manager because I need to have a documented care plan, and we need procedures, and I need the PAs to be, following certain protocols and all doing the same thing, because my mother obviously can't tell them what to do. And they're all doing slightly different things, or some of them, aren't doing what they should do. And it also, then I'm finding it difficult is if I needed to have a disciplinary with somebody when I've got all those, the boundaries are very sort of mixed. So I suppose it's linked to having that support person, and also I suppose it might be recruitment, actually recruiting the right sort of people. And if you've got any tips on that, that's probably a whole load of questions there, sorry.
So for the recruitment, the last webinar that we did, we very much got into detail about finding the right PA. So you'll be able to go back and look at that. And it's interesting because the HR, the human resource issue about supervising staff, is something that's been raised a lot recently by a number of families saying, how do I supervise the staff when they're in my house? So Karen's here with me. How do you manage? I mean, you're a wife, you've got PAs constantly in your house, you're in the same situation. Sometimes Gavin can't say, I want this, I want that. How do you manage that?
Hello.
Hi.
In response to your questions, first of all, I fully understand how you feel. It does feel like an invasion, but for me, I manage it by thinking, well, the invasion gives me some freedom. We, the company that do our payroll, they provided us with a handbook that we tailored that it includes the contracts, and what we did then, we actually within the handbook itself, it was personalised to the do's and the don'ts, and it's a really personal support plan, really, around what Gavin needs, what Gavin likes, what he doesn't like. I think what makes it work is I have to acknowledge that I'm not perfect either. Yes, they get on my nerves. Yes, they invade our space, but they do an amazing job. If they're doing something wrong, we try and have the open, honest discussion, you know, about that. And then initially I had to ask myself, why are they doing it wrong? Have I not given them the right information to do it right? So it's around, it really is around being open and honest, and making sure that you give them the information to do what needs to be done. If it's around managing risk, if you say she can't speak, I'm not sure about the other stuff she has, you probably do need some outside help for that, but I'm assuming some district nurses come in, they can actually help with that as well. I'm more than happy to talk to you outside of here if you wanted to, via email, if that would be helpful, and share some bits of what we've got.
Do you have a broker, Helen? Do you have a broker in the way that the advisor works from Cheshire Silver, Miro, and other people?
No, this is this is, I guess, what I've been looking for, and the CCG told what they came up with was that I could make one of the PAs a team leader. But I sort of need to have more like a care manager, I think, that can overview and that can do those sort of things. You know, I don't have a problem too much with the carers being in the house because they need to be, but it's more
the management and the HR side of it. So Lisa,
I've got a carer who won't wear wears a mask when there's somebody else watching, but then sometimes doesn't wear a mask when she's providing personal care. You know, and that's in the middle of the night. And so really, I suppose it needs to be a disciplinary, but I find that very difficult to do.
Really hard, yeah. Lisa, have you got comments on this?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Karen said in the sense that Jamie and I devised a person-centred job description, person spec and a contract. One of the reasons that we went down the managed account route currently with him is that they now provide, they call it a supported living something or other, but they can actually provide that sort of support. We find that we use it very little, and she actually spends most of her time saying, oh, I didn't know we could do it like that. But it is useful as a backup because I know that that's there for Jamie if ever my health deteriorates. The other thing that we've done, which is possibly quite controversial, is that Jamie chose to have cameras installed in his house. They're not covert cameras, they're out in the open. It's detailed in the contract, it's detailed in the handbook, everyone knows they're there. And we do use those, and all of his PAs know that they're there as well. And that has proved useful once when we did have a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I've got, at the moment, I've got baby monitors, but I'm actually looking to have CCTV. And again, they know about it, but some of them, you know, I've had it where the carers were turning them round, the night carers, so that I couldn't see what they're doing. And I think that, you know, the waking night carers are probably going to sleep. So,
yeah,
I mean, I guess
well, I think on those examples, I think there's probably grounds for disciplinary action, or at least a conversation with staff. And if you provide contracts to staff, then it'd be something that I would probably bring up in terms of the duties and responsibilities. The broader point about kind of support advisor, I would probably go back to the contact in the local government, in CCG or LA, and ask them if they are working with any DPO or Centre for Independent Living, who provide the kind of broader support around personal health budgets, or delivery of care, health and care. If they don't, then it may be worthwhile trying to find your local one. I think nearest to you might be the disability. What's it called? I think it's a disability resource centre.
Yeah, they do my payroll.
Yeah,
They're
so
not,
maybe worthwhile. Have you spoke to them about these issues?
They're not terribly. I don't know how to say anything diplomatically.
Sure, sure.
All right.
But again,
So,
if you give me an email outside of this, I can link you up some decent kind of activists around independent living in that area, and they might be able to advise.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks, Miro. Sue, anything to add?
Well, just quickly to add, it does sound like you're taking on an awful lot on to yourself, which must be quite wearing. And so you could consider a small circle of support just to take the pressure off you a bit, because a circle of support can work wonders in perhaps interviewing a PA, and it does mean that in the circle of the supporters is a bit removed, and so it can be easier for them to tackle those issues. So I think there are various ways, as has been outlined by the others, and which you can get some additional support.
Keep in touch with us, Helen. Just email us, and we'll connect you to different bits of advice then that can get you connected.
Right. And it's finding people to work with who have the same ethos and values, really, because the thing that just drives me mad is just because my mother can't talk, they'll start talking in front of her, saying she and about her, and yes, it just drives me mad.
I mean, have a look at the last webinar that we did last week, because Tricia in particular spent a lot, and Karen as well, spent a lot of time saying actually you can train people in all sorts of support techniques, but you can't train the attitude. So it's important to find the right people with the right attitude in the first place.
Yes.
A comment that's just come in from Danielle is, what does DPO stand for? It's Disabled People Organisations. So sometimes they're called CILs, which is Centre of Independent Living, or sometimes they're called DPOs, which is Disabled People's Organisations that are led by people themselves who are living it. I'm going to come to Sheila now. Sheila, if you just unmute yourself.
Hi, Sheila and Michael. Hi, can you hear us clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sheila wants me to kick off with the overview, and I know that she will be super critical if I leave something out. We're in Essex. We have a 35-year-old son, David, who has a constellation of disabilities, but for the last 14 years, he's been living independently from us, and for the last 12 years has been in a shared ownership house with a housing association. So he's part owner. And we're funded to have 24/7 care from the local authority, and we have 4 PAs. So most of the questions that have been raised have been part answered, but I will roll over things quickly because we very much support what Miro says, and we do most of what he has mentioned. And I think the important thing is, though, to keep control for yourself. And by that we mean we maintain monetary control, that we use a payroll service. We undertake the reviews on David's behalf with the local authority, and we allow David, using the old-fashioned terms, true independence, choice and control. The things that we found challenging over the years, probably employing staff, although having said that, the majority of our staff have been with us a long time, and the individual we call our team leader has been with us for 15 years.
Yeah.
And others have been with us for 6, 7 years, 10 years, and they've all left for other reasons that they've needed to move away for family reasons. Our challenge recently has been, we lost a member of staff just before the lockdown. He left because his wife was unwell. We found it impossible to recruit somebody during the lockdown period. We were just not getting any response to advertisements. So we started to look after David. But then our younger son, David's brother, who's been working from home, said that we shouldn't do that. He's worried about us because of our age and underlying health issues we have. So Matthew has been the 4th PA. And just as others have said, Matthew takes the back seat. He takes the minimum number of hours. He offers hours out to others if they want more time. And this is literally just to tide us over. But now that furloughing has ceased, we're finding we get a large number of applicants for the job, and we're actually seeing somebody for a second interview this afternoon after this webinar.
We only employ men.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, we only employ men. We're allowed to do that by the nature of the job, and David enjoys that. So his home is a very blokey environment. Much to sometimes your annoyance, Sheila, isn't it? But,
well, I have higher standards.
But,
yeah.
That's good.
But it works really well. David is incredibly happy. We were worried about how he would adjust to losing virtually all of his activities, which involve a lot of going out and about. But the staff have been fantastic, and David has come up trumps, and it's worked really well.
Not through lockdown.
Yeah, throughout the whole lockdown process. Our challenges are dealing with the local authorities. Essex is not renowned for being easy, and many occasions their drive at review times is to do with money and not services. And we've had several heated confrontations with them, one of which, and I don't want to go into detail, involving lawyers. That's several years ago. And we're on slightly better footing now. But the greatest challenge is we never have a consistent social worker. So we have no single point to go to.
You certainly don't have a support advisor.
No. And whenever we have a review, we say to the people involved, please read the notes beforehand. They don't read the notes. They come in. They treat us as if we had no concept of how to run a direct payment process, which we've been doing for 18 years altogether, and they've not read David's notes, and so the process tends to get off to a very, very poor start.
And can take 3 or 4 hours.
Yes, so we adopt the approach.
Yeah, at least is our experience. Yeah, it can often take a lot longer. Yeah.
Oh yes. Well, normally, if they insist on seeing David, we put a cap on that we say ask all the questions you want of David at this stage, because after an hour and a half, 2 hours, David will leave. Otherwise, it's not fair on him.
No, it can be quite an abusive situation in some ways, we find. Especially as we've been running this care package successfully for a long while. And in the Care Act, it does say that local authorities should give us a light touch. And it's only this year we've ever got a light touch review. They just go over the same stuff all the time. Yes. As if, things change, and they haven't.
We try and adopt the open approach where we say this is what's needed and this is what's within the Care Act, and we find that frequently the social workers either don't know or have been told to ignore many of those aspects. So sadly it can end in a somewhat confrontational approach, which we do not want, but I think that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. I
think it has been. I just hope that some of the experience that some people have had over the pandemic, for good and for evil, will start making a difference, and we'll get back to the stage where people do trust people to get on with it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
Certainly that's
it
what we're
is.
trying to get people to understand now, is actually if you trust people to get on with it, it's usually more economically viable and you know, results in a much better relationship. I'm going to move us on because I'm going to come to Pippa, and then I want to just check with Tricia if there's any questions that we think are
I
urgent.
think we'd round up and say the important thing is take advice, but use it for your benefit. Don't let others control the package.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that. Pippa, I'm coming to you now. You just need to unmute yourself. Okay, Pippa's not unmuting. Tricia, is there any other questions to pick up?
There's a few people, and I think I said this, if anybody, it's not something people always want to talk about, panellists always want to talk about, but if anybody, there's a few people interested in the range of rates that people pay, particularly the rates the local authority or CCG want you to pay for that. So I just put that out there to anybody.
Hello.
Hi, Pippa. Sorry, can you just hold on to that rates of pay for a minute, because Pippa's come on now. Hi, Pippa.
Hello. Again, another fantastic talk, and I really learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks.
Did they hear me?
Did you hear her?
Yeah, they're fantastic and great people.
Yeah, I need to ask Margaret a question. Margaret, can you come and help me, please, one day? Because
that's directly to you, Miro. I think.
Well, I remember from last webinar. I thought you were going to email me or message me, and then we set something up. I'm waiting for you to email me.
I had got your email.
All right, we'll pass that on, Pippa, and yes, we'll certainly help in whatever way we can.
Hello, Monza.
Ask you something.
Yeah.
You're saying hello to you too, Monza.
Hi.
I don't live by you anymore.
I know. You. I think I know you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, we've got our own little community coming on here now that all know each other, aren't they?
Wrong.
Yeah.
Warsaw.
Okay.
I think I know you from Warsaw.
Yeah. You're correct.
Right, you can talk separately to this. We'll go back to the question that Tricia about rates of pay. Yeah, Lisa?
Yeah, we certainly pay over the standard local rate. As far as I'm concerned, it's Jamie's money. He decides in order to get the people that he wants and to keep them. Yes, we do. We pay about £2 an hour above the local rate round here. We're in the north, so obviously it varies in different places. Because apart from anything else, we invest quite a lot of time and effort in training people. And the last thing that Jamie needs is kind of a turnover of staff and losing people that we've really invested in. We've never had any problem with it. Bottom line, we've got the pot of money. As long as we stick to the pot, then that's all anyone seems to care about.
I think that's really helpful, Lisa. It's like what you're not saying is we want more money because we're paying more. We've got the pot, we're making it work this way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's great. Anybody else want to say anything about rates of pay?
Karen's here.
We had a discussion with the CCG based on the role that the PAs were undertaking, because they do undertake a lot of clinical tasks that they'd have specialist training for. And we actually got the CCG to agree a higher rate based on the work that they actually do. Does that make sense?
Completely.
Will. I. Give. Which. I think. They. Have. Experience. I get which I think they have experience.
Yeah, so Monza has, I think it's pretty well capped, isn't it, by your local authority? So he doesn't have massive flexibility, but he is able to, if he had reduced hours, then they'd be able to top it up based on their experience. Miro?
Yeah, because I have 24 hours, it's quite hard to get the flexibility in the budget to top up. And we have it's not a great level of pay, but it's set by the CCG. The only point to add to everybody else's is that I am aware of some people who have demonstrated to the CCG that, you know, through recruitment drives, either they're not getting any kind of interest in the role, and also that there's a high turnover of staff who are leaving because pay conditions in the local, you know, supermarket can be better. So there is a strong, sometimes that people have used that as a way to argue for a slightly more increase in the hourly rate. It's not a great tactic to use because it is a long process to try to argue the case, but I have seen people do it.
And I've just seen on the chat box, nobody's saying what I can't insist that any of the panelists say what they pay per hour, but the average seems to be across local authorities is up to £10 an hour for PAs, and CCGs, if people have a particular medical need, it can go up to £12 to £13 an hour, seems to be the average. Having said that, within the Care Act, it does say that your direct payment should be equivalent to what the market average rate is. So there has been some cases where people haven't had that flexibility, where they've quoted that as their rights and said, well, I'm aware that an agency would cost £15 an hour, therefore if I average my budget on those costs, can I have more than the £10 an hour? And again, that's something I think that needs to be properly teased out, because I'm not convinced that having a separate direct payment rate is lawful in some cases. It's got to go across the average market rate. So I hope that answers the question about nobody saying what they pay per hour. I think in some respects, I think even though local authorities or CCG set that rate, it's meant to be done against a background of what is the market average. Trisha, have you any experience of that as well?
Yeah, I have. So exactly like Lisa, I said I didn't want more money, but it's as Mira says, it's different if you're looking for, if you need support 24/7, there is less flexibility there. So when sort of I had needed less support for my two, and right from the beginning, to be fair, I always paid more. So when I lived in the north of England, the direct payments rate was, and I'm going back 12 or so years now, so I'm going back before minimum wage, our initial rate, I was supposed to be paying something like £6.50, and I paid £8 an hour. That was going back 11 years. The direct payment rate was supposed to be, I was supposed to pay people just under £9 an hour. I always paid 10, and the last time I paid people, I've been paying people £12 an hour. So even though the rate was less than that, but that's not about saying I want that much more money. It's about saying, here's the budget, I will make savings elsewhere because it's important to me to pay people the right amount of money. So now that was for my kids, and I have to say I got away with that with the kids. My mum, which was a different local authority, I was categorically told that was not possible. So it does vary with local authority to local authority, as somebody else said earlier on, how the Care Act, how they enact the Care Act. It's really frustrating. Really frustrating.
Yeah. Postcode.
Happy to chat with anybody who wants to have that conversation about funding. I've got a couple of specific things. Karen, I'm sure you will do. A couple of people asked about the website that you use, website template that you were talking about. If you'd be happy to share that.
Well, it's not mine actually. the PA did it. It was the PA that made it. One of the PAs. So in theory, much as they've done it for us, it's his little thing. I can ask him if somebody wants to email me. That's fine. And he'll probably give you pointers on how to do it, but I'm not an IT expert myself, so I'm a glue and glitter girl.
Everybody will have all our emails, so if you're specifically interested in Karen's, in that sense, email Karen. And also there's a couple of people on the call offering to share stuff, so if you've got stuff you want to share, policies and procedures and stuff, then I think that'd be, you know, we always welcome people who've got something they think is interesting they've done, then let us have it. If you're happy for it to be shared with people, that'd be fantastic. I think we've picked them up mainly. I mean, there's this, the only other one, and this is quite a big one, so it might be worth just pointing to some of the documentation that's come out, is that about preparing in terms of paying family members and preparing for going back to not being able to do that necessarily because government are saying as of the 1st of August you don't need to be shielding, and therefore the situation might have changed. Now there's a few bits of direct payments guidance that's come out from the Department for Health, and there's also another couple that's come out from another organisation that we can send out to people. But just a quick one, particularly I guess from you, Mira, about as people prepare not to shield, has anybody done any thinking about how that's going to work in terms of paying family members?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of points. One is that you do need to prepare for that. So there needs to be a kind of transition period away from using your family members if you need to, you know, remove them off. But the caveat to that is don't be forced by CCG because they say technically shielding has come to an end. Shielding on a national level is a policy decision related to government objectives around the economy and various other political aspirations. So you need to think about it in the context of your own health. So, for example, on a personal level, shielding comes to an end in a couple of weeks, but I'm being told by medical professionals you wait until at least January before we review that, the idea of shielding. So for my context, it's going to have to continue because we're going to have to limit the amount of people coming in the house till at least January. So there may be some pressures from people to say, okay, well now you've had your family member on the books, get them off because shielding has come to an end. But you're quite within your right to say, well, actually, in the context of my own health needs, this has to remain the case for the time being, and we have to have mechanisms of checking and monitoring what's working well. But the key thing is don't be pressured into making a decision if you're not comfortable with it, with regard to your health in particular.
Yeah, and quite a lot of people have gone to their own GP or clinicians to say, well, you know, government back, they're saying that for the general population, but for me specifically, I've had clinical advice to continue to shield. So some people have been actively going and speaking to their own GPs or different clinicians to say, should I now stop shielding, or am I able to go and getting that advice that way as well? We're coming. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, just a really quick point. As part of that as well, I think it's important that we start planning for what's going to happen for the second wave, because there is another wave coming, and it has major implications for accessing personalized support. So, you know, this pandemic, the implications of the pandemic is not going to go away. So it's probably best now to start thinking about how do you want to manage your support system when the next wave comes, which is probably going to be, you know, quite soon.
All right. Brilliant. So we're just coming to 4 o'clock. I'm so sorry if we've missed answering your questions. Apologies to Tom, Raquel and Yvonne that I haven't been able to, and Issa now as well, that I haven't been able to open you live to ask your questions. But please email them in. And if you want to have a chat with people, we will link to you, have a phone call, or we'll do another webinar with set topics that people want to discuss. But thank you so much to the panel. Thank you again, Miro, Monza, Sue, Karen, Lisa, and Tricia and Gaynor, working hard underneath. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll have another webinar soon. And if you've any topics or themes that you want to join in on, please let us know. Thanks everybody for joining. Bye.